Well, everyone, welcome to the 2023 first ever International Euphonium Summit. I'm your host, Nicholas Hopter von Heide, Farm for Dreams, and I have a special guest with us today, Luca Sutto. I hope I
Hi,
pronounced
everybody.
that correct, right?
Yeah, that's great. Perfect.
Perfect. Awesome. I want to welcome you watching us today or listening to us for the first time, maybe. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, leave a comment where you're watching us from. And if you happen to be in the Hamburg, Germany area, that's where our guest is from currently as the timing of this media. And we welcome you and hope you stick around, as well as enjoy all the content and interviews as we go along and try to searching for and equipping the current and future Euphonium students with a roadmap to their successful dream life. Luca Sutto, a Hamburg-based composer, pianist, and creative force, intertwines historical practice with a present-day flair. After a decade of academia, he works freelance and captivates diverse audiences worldwide. With an energetic involvement on social media, website, newsletter, which you can subscribe on his website, I'll put a link below, and more, he also inspires other artists to thrive. And that's why he's here, folks. Welcome, Mr. Luca Sutto.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you for taking this time and making yourself available, not for just this interview, but for the interviews to come, to fill out your minuets as we're refining this day by day to become the best version of itself. Like we're wanting those that are watching to become their best version of where they're at currently, and hope to thrive and land that successful dream job, or provide the opportunities or commissioning of new solo works, especially like the one you wrote for and had Marina Bozelli play on the Euphonium. So yeah, let's get started. When did you first start composing and crafting your own music?
I would say I began starting composing music when I was playing around with the piano, and I was probably in my early teens. And back then, I didn't have any kind of formal education in music, so I was playing everything by ear and couldn't read any notes and so on, totally self-taught. And but I think I really didn't clearly separate composing, improvising, and performing. It was more like the same flow for me. And I started actually composing on a professional level during my master degree. It was, wait a second, 2017. So during my Master of Arts.
Well, with that particular euphonium piece that you that Marino Bozelli played, it's a very substantial piece, and I'll leave the link below for that performance, as well as on the pages associated. When did you start involving euphonium?
It was, I think it was the COVID era, and I just quite randomly connected with Marina Bozelli, which is who is this euphonium player from Italy, and you interviewed her. So and I think we connected through social media, just randomly. I saw some posts that she was doing, and at that time she was collaborating a lot with like emerging composers, and we kind of teamed up, and the result was this suite for Euphonium. And I'd say that for me in general, but for a lot of people I know, social media turned out to be quite the gateway for new opportunities and collaborations.
Absolutely. So diving back into your kind of childhood, are there any kind of like influences or inspirations that you could perhaps take as your kind of start to improvising on the piano or being around music?
When I was a child, probably I would say at that time, like many people of my generation, we stumbled upon music mainly through movies and even through video games, probably. Because I don't come from an art family, my family don't have any kind of cultural, like artistic background and so on. So for me, it was probably my first encounter with music. And after that, probably in my early teenage years, I've started working. I was playing a lot of the computer, like a lot of people, and I started composing, quote unquote, with DAWs and all this kind of electronic music. And at the same time, I started learning a bit of piano by myself. And it was the late 90s, early 2000s. So at that time, internet wasn't really as developed as today. So yeah, it was also quite different. So my experience was more based on, hey, I listen to a music that something that I like, a piece that I like, and I try to replicate that on the piano. So that was my way, you know.
So did
Yeah.
you have a piano at your house?
I did have like a 4-octave digital piano, really bad piano, like these keyboards, Casio keyboard. No offense against Casio, but for beginners it's great, but it was really like a very entry level kind of thing.
Wow, that's so was that like did your parents see that kind of start for your musical journey and get you that piano for like a gift, or did you just pick one up?
Well, the official story is that is a gift. The unofficial story is that I think my father kind of stole it from somewhere because he just came home with this keyboard and it was like, I don't know where it comes from and so on. But I think it was just an idea, you know, when your kid is like 11 years old and you try different things, you know, and I saw this thing and I say, oh cool, it works, and then I started playing like that and trying to, you know, to listen to things and play it back, and that's how I started basically. And like I said, I wasn't able to read the notes. I started learning how to read the notes when I was in the conservatory, so I was like already 18, 19 years old, very late actually. Yeah.
Well, that's really exceptional that you have that ability, or that, well, I mean, it's not really an ability. You took the initiative. I think would be more proper. You took the initiative to explore what captured your mind and captured your ear more likely with that. So you mentioned video games and movies. What were the first kind of movie and or video game that you started playing on that Casio piano?
Well, it's funny because if you think about that, I am seeing myself with the eyes of the past with my actual students now, because I think when you are like 11, 12, most of us are like Star Wars fans, or, you know, that kind of Joe Williams scores fans, you know. And so for me, that was my gateway to symphonic music, definitely. And also, I think somehow, I don't want to sound silly, but, you know, also I think Disney movies, when I was even younger, played a big role, because there's a lot of music there. And also very like melodic and very classical kind of music, you know. And I think the rebel part of my life went a bit later on, happened a bit later on with the rock music and so on. I used to do some kind of DJing at that time, and especially in bars and pubs. So I've been listening to a lot of rock and punk music and all this kind of things, right? And also a lot of disco music, because in the end there was also a lot of electronic music at that time. It was the late 90s, there was MTV rocking, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, most of I know the parents will understand MTV, but not so maybe much as the younger artists that are coming up nowadays. Even like VH1.
Yeah, it was a bit different back then, I think. Yes.
Indeed, and we have Spotify now and uh, all these opportunities, Pandora, and all these opportunities to listen to a whole conglomerate of different music, especially works for Euphonium on these media outlets.
Absolutely.
So when you did you also learn to like sing at a young age too? How did you learn pitch per se?
I never learned. I mean, I've been in a choir, but I was already in conservatories. I was like 20 years old. When I was young, I didn't have any kind of musical education. There was something very, very um uh, I probably 1 hour a week per week in school, but nothing exceptional. And it's always funny when I think about that, because I should have had developed some kind of interest for music through that, right? Because I eventually became a musician, but no, it happened in a completely different time period and through a completely different medium.
So you didn't sing along to those Disney musicals or anything?
Yes, I like that. I always had a very good memory, so I could remember all of these things in a very also probably compulsive way, and also for also instrumental music, not only vocal music. So not only songs. And I remember I was able to remember even like in entire movies like by heart and with all the sound effects. And it was a bit weird actually,
So
also for
you
my parents.
so with the sound, that's interesting. So you knew like almost all the lines, you knew the music and sound effects?
I still do, and it's a kind of a weird thing
Yeah.
about me. I don't have perfect pitch. I don't have any kind of weird things, but I only have this thing that I have this sort of oral retention that's very
Robust.
very, yeah, very weird. I can remember entire movies from second zero to second, I don't know, by heart with the right timing, and it's just weird, you know. Everybody has this kind of
Sure.
hidden useless talents, you know.
Well, that's not useless, that's for sure. So let's when did you first notice that your parents noticed?
um you know, I don't consider myself to be like a talent, you know, or
Sure.
something like that, anything like that. So I think it was more actually kind of obvious in my family that I was just built like that. We never actually noticed, you know. I just went on with what I wanted to do, and that was it, you know.
So when you went to the conservatory for the first time, or uh how did that conversation work with your parents when you told them, hey, I want to, or what did you ask them, what do you think about if I were to go to a conservatory for music? Or how did that exchange go between you and your parents?
When I was done with my high school, I said I want to apply for a conservatory, and my parents said, like all parents should probably say, okay, but also please have a backup plan, you know, because you never know. You are 19 years old, you know nothing about life, um, so I enrolled a conservatory, and I also enrolled a musicology university, only because I saw music in the title. So I say, okay, that should work. But in the end, no, it was something very distant from what I wanted to do, and I dropped out after 6 months. But I was giving some promising results in conservatory, so my parents actually were kind of they always have been very supportive. So yeah, and I lasted in the academia actually for 11 years. So I started, got 3 degrees, and yeah, I think in the long run it was the right idea.
So I want to kind of take a side trip down the as where nearing the end of this minuet, this really amazing introduction piece to your magnum opus, your life story. The kind of going into your 6-month trip to the music university, right? How did, when you first arrived, what was your initial thought of like what you're going to be getting in, like your expectation of going into that program?
You mean musicology or the
Yes.
conservatory?
No, the musicology. Yes.
Like I said, I was 18 and 19. I didn't know anything about anything.
Sure.
So for me, it was okay. There's the word music inside of musicology. Let's give it a shot. And there were a lot of classes, mostly humanistics, of course, like this kind of things. And I've always actually liked those topics in general. So it was fun for a while, but it's my expectation. I don't think I didn't even have expectation. Everything was just like new, you know, it was the end of a cycle. It was something new was beginning. So I was living out of, I don't know, thin air probably. Yeah. And
Sure.
yeah.
So at the end of, like, what was your wake up point in that musicology program to where you realized it was not the fit that you wanted, and you really dove into the conservatory like full mind?
Well, probably was just the comparison between the two. Because I was, on the one hand, I was studying and going to all these courses with all this subject, including literature and all these things. And on the other hand, I was learning music, you know. So for me, it was clear at some point what I wanted to do. And yeah, it took me probably less than 6 months to realize that I didn't want, but it was like, okay, let's go on
Finish
for
this
6
out.
months. Yeah.
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 Okay, so that point, because a lot of these students, maybe these student artists at whichever level, maybe at the same point that, you know, as they're listening to this now or watching this, is that point of making that decision, going full in and saying, yes, this is what I really want to do in life. And so you're going to commit full force. And yes, you realize that you want to stop at that 6 months, that natural break, kind of like the end of this chapter, as we're nearing the end of this particular composition. The that moment of when that moment, the clarity that you somehow was a part of in moving forward in the conservatory, was that point that you wanted to do that as a dream career and make that like?
So that's actually very tough to answer. I will say when I'm gonna be a parent, if I'm gonna be a parent, I wouldn't recommend the same that I did, you know.
Right. But
yeah,
everybody's going to follow the paths that are set before. So your journey, you can help someone, instead of going to that dual path, focus on one instead of both, or the wrong one. So,
you know, the thing is that, like I said, since I don't come from an art family, and actually I grew up for the first 14 years of my life in a village of 100 people.
Oh, wow.
Forgot to mention that.
Oh, small town, very small town.
100 is nothing, right? And this means that I didn't have any direct access to even to know what a conservatory looks like, what a university, and all these things, right? And like I said, internet wasn't as developed as now.
Right.
So the reason why I make those decisions, and so I probably was not brave, but kind of incautioned and so on, is that everything I had to do in my life, I had to find it on my own, you know? And I didn't have anybody telling me better if you do this and if you do that. And so the reason why I say I wouldn't recommend the same to other people is because if I were if my son or my daughter is gonna decide something like that, I will have some information to give,
Absolutely.
before they make the decision, So it's gonna be different in that case. And I think for the future generations, it's gonna be a bit different because they will have many more opportunities to get informed before.
Just like through the International Euphonium Summit and the intention of, showcasing artists and composers like Luca and Marina Bozelli and all those around the world. And instead of, staying in your home country or your hometown or whatever, for those that are seeing or hearing this, the opportunities for a global a more robust, more rounded education of, instead of being, as we would put it in nowadays, in the closet or, is stuck inside of a room. The potential for greater things is really exploded in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. And I told you on a flip side that I really appreciate the kind of work that you are doing because I find it extremely valuable, especially for new generations. It's just something that I wish I had this opportunity when I was 20 years ago,
Well, I mean, I don't know. So in my stage of life, I often think about that what you just said. I had that reflection as well. And if it wasn't for you going through those points, we wouldn't be here right now. You and I wouldn't be here. I don't think. It may have happened sooner. Who's to say? But I do know for one thing is that this moment in time is the exact moment, whether they're going to be watching or listening or reading this at some point down the road, that's going to be their appointed time of, yes, I understand where Luca is coming from. I too come from a small town, maybe what the reader or listener or watcher is going through right now, or find some perspective that can take them, like the whole creation of this as bridging that gap, that knowledge gap, that gap of the unknown, and saying, yes, here's a path that someone else has gone before, like yourself or any other artist or composer, conductor, any walk of life. And instead of doing the Indiana Jones, that bridge of faith, and walking over like an invisible bridge, there's an actual bridge. There's a path that has worked before. Not to say that those who want to leave a comment below and reach out to you because they are going through what kind of that transition where you found yourself at, and you might be able to mentor them on a different level or even provide them a lesson or, kind of some tips or additional points. And so it's really this time it's definitely not like any time ever before. And I really appreciate you coming on and starting this amazing work within the Farm for Dreams and the International Euphonium Summit and moving forward. I can't wait to see how the chapters fill out and going into kind of the future chapters when you first felt like you were an emerging composer, or when you really put the notes to actual like written notes to the soundtracks of your life from previous encounters, or when you got to your first grand piano to work on the keys, or when you first understood how jazz works and learning the all the different blues scales and such like that. these are all what makes our journey really unique. And that's just like the notes that I took in just this short amount of time, that these chapters, these minuets, are going to overarch and provide that foundation for Luca's amazing story, including the 11 years of academia beyond high school. Because here in the United States, it's not when people think, or parents think, well, 8 years is the typical route of a doctor, not 11 years as a musician. And it's just a different framework and a mindset. And so we're going to cover that in future minuets and shape out those magical compositions with words in a book or these videos or podcasts and such like that, blog posts. And he did announce that he's working on a newsletter. I'll put the link below to get you help you be part of that, his creations as he moves forward in this journey together with us and together with you, and provide you possibly a soundtrack for maybe a recital piece or a piece for your up and coming CD, or understanding the dynamics of how children, I don't know, I'm just throwing out possible like doctoral thesis or dissertations where they could study your life and works and understand that, you know, you're one in a billion in a way of composers and musical artists, in capturing that because of your upbringing in such a small one size of 100 town. What town are you from?
Well, the name is quite difficult to pronounce, but
that's why you're going to pronounce it, not me.
It's actually not even the town that I am from, which is make the story even more complicated. But let's just say that my parents moved there for work, and the town is it's not even a town. Come on, it's a village, and it's it is called Grondola.
Gondola.
Yeah, it's like a village up on a cliff in the middle of Tuscany, Italy.
Wow, that's I think of you know, when people when those say the word Tuscany, I think of sun-dried tomatoes, rustic sons, and wine.
Exactly.
Have you gone back to visit your village?
I do it from time to time. Now, as you mentioned, I'm living in Hamburg, Germany, so I come back to Italy probably 3-4 times a year, just a couple of weeks or even 1 week for holidays. And when I have some spare time, I just go, because you have to take the car. You can't go like by foot. And yeah, I just go and visit and see if everything is still the same. And so far, it's always the same.
Does your mom and dad, do your parents still live there?
No, they live in a slightly bigger town, a couple of kilometers away. My mother lives there. My father lives elsewhere, but more or less in the same area. Sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's good to revisit your old as we would call them in the US. I don't know, in Italy or Germany, old stomping grounds.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing, Luca, and starting these minuets with the International Euphonium Summit and showcasing your journey from the beginning of your musical talents, as rich and interesting as I've never run into someone with your background, and it's really fascinating because there's going to be those that can identify with this, and I can't wait to see the impact that this video or the podcast or whatever makes in a student artist's life, from hearing your story, maybe being inspired and doing greater things
Well, I really hope so. I really hope so, because I think that people that have such an atypical background like I did are the one that probably need the most support, you know, in this situation, because they just have less information about everything. So yeah, I hope so.
Absolutely. I can't wait to have you on for our second minuet.
Great. I'm looking forward too.
Likewise. And so with that being said, everyone, thank you so much for stopping by, and leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and subscribe to Luca's newsletter. And as we continue this journey forward, and welcome you back to the future episodes, and check out our other artists, guests, and composers, conductors, organizations that can help you bridge your gap and equip you with the information you need, just like Luca has here today, with providing that roadmap to a successful dream life, your dream life. Again, thank you for stopping by. Have a great day, everybody, and serve well. Bye, everyone.